Good morning, good afternoon, and hopefully good evening. My name is Patrick Corcoran, Global Director of Luxoft's External Relations Practice, and I am fortunate enough to serve as chair of our live roundtable. We have decided to swiftly move away from the golden webinar days and really move into a dialogue, accompanied by a few slides, yet only to be aimed at helping visualize our discussion around the topics. Luxoft is joined here today by one of the leading sourcing advisory firms, ISG, represented by digital lead Jamie Burke, who is tasked with the important role of discussant. And our panelists, we are joined by two of my colleagues, Managing Director for Digital Enterprise, Sam Mantle, and Blockchain Solutions Architect, the Architect, Todd Gerke. Colleagues, please introduce yourself.
Good morning, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Sam Mantle, as Patrick said, Managing Director of Digital Enterprise at Luxoft, and recently been heading the healthcare and life science business. I'm a 20-year IT professional in industry and across industry and consulting, with over 10 years in the pharma and biotech sector. Very excited to be talking with colleagues and partners here today for a good discussion about the disruption in the industry that we see today.
Hello, everyone. I'm Todd Gerke. I'm part of the Luxoft digital team, where we focus on emerging technologies. For the past year, I've been leading the blockchain practice in the US for Luxoft. I have a 20-year background in developing distributed systems across multiple business verticals.
Good morning, good afternoon, all. This is James Burke. I am a director in our IT digital sourcing advisory practice with ISG. I have, for the last 5 years or so, been deep in the bowels of healthcare organizations, helping them execute digital transformations and other merger and acquisition activities. I look forward to speaking with you today.
Thank you, everyone. With that said, Jamie will begin the discussion from both an industry and a digital perspective, followed by my colleagues on the topics at hand. We will then have a question and answer session at the end of the roundtable, but feel free to ask during the panel presentation, and we shall aggregate them and moderate them accordingly at the end. So everyone has access to the Zoom webinar chat. Feel free to send your questions in as we go through the discussion, and we will certainly infuse them into the dialogue as we move forward. I have 2 slides here on Luxoft, but I really don't want to go through slide for slide. I just want to give you a bit of context on who we are for some of the listeners who may not be that familiar with Luxoft. We are a global IT service provider with expertly engineered, highly performing technology solutions that we view are delivering measurable business outcomes to the all multinational companies. Our comprehensive offerings really are in 3 areas: strategic consulting, custom software development services, and what we're starting to see is digital solution engineering really take a hold on the business outcome of the client demands. Now, Luxoft has leveraged both the mature Agile and the increasingly important DevOps practices that are complemented in a managed delivery service model. And we can scale from individual projects to the entire portfolios of our clients. One of the key areas is really our highly tenured and experienced IT professional workforce. These are anchored in the multi-industry domains, but they lay the foundation for us to give us the ability to innovate upwards on the technology stack. And what that allows us to do is pursue the digital challenges that are continuously evolving. In this case, we'll talk about the healthcare world, but I think we all see it across the board. We have over 13,000 employees stretched across 5 continents, headquartered in Zug, Switzerland, and are fortunate enough to be traded on the New York Stock Exchange. Now, with that said, this is going to be quite a robust discussion, as we're going to focus on some of the key areas in the About Luxoft slide here and the importance that they show to the topics at hand. So with that said, I'd like to turn it over to Jamie from ISG.
So ISG is a leading global technology research and advisory firm. We specialize in digital transformation services, including automation, cloud, data analytics, sourcing advisory, managed governance and risk services, network carrier services, technology, strategy and operations design, change management, market intelligence, technology research and analysis, just to name a few. We're based in Stamford, Connecticut. ISG employs more than 1,300 professionals operating in over 20 countries. We are a global team known for our innovative thinking, our market influence, our deep industry and technology expertise, and world-class research and analytical capabilities based on the industry's most comprehensive marketplace data. We, too, are lucky enough to be publicly traded. And as you can see, we're the only independent publicly traded advisory firm in the industry, triple I on the NASDAQ. Thank you.
So if we can kick off the discussion, disruption in healthcare, we sort of wanted to frame the discussion by the way that the way that we're approaching the market in Luxoft. And we could go to the next slide. We can see that many companies see healthcare and the life science industries as two very separate markets, two separate sectors. But actually, what we're increasingly seeing is the convergence of the payer, the provider, government ecosystems, and those of pharma, biotech, medtech, and diagnostic companies converging around data and the proliferation and access to different and growing data sources, and the accessibility of new technologies that are either being created by players within the ecosystem or by companies that are making inroads into the healthcare sector. And the patient are at the heart of this industry. So everything that these different organizations are doing is targeted towards patients and improving the benefits to patients of the treatments, of the services, and of their well-being within this ecosystem. And we start to see now that healthcare has not been one of the leading industries in adoption of new technology for very good reasons. There's a lot of conservatism, but there is without doubt a huge opportunity to strip cost out of that overall ecosystem. And the organizations that are combining the data with the technology and focusing truly on patient engagement and patient well-being are best placed to be able to do that. So Jamie, I was interested then in your thoughts. How do you see this at the macro level with the disruption that's taking place across companies within these different parts of the ecosystem?
Absolutely. Thanks, Sam. So at a very high level, right, in the last couple of years, we've seen organizations try to merge horizontally. You've seen billions of dollars spent by folks such as Cigna and Anthem and Humana and Aetna trying to bring their organizations together, right? Well, as we saw, the Justice Department didn't like the impact on perceived competition for the customer. So what's going on now? Vertical integration is now in hyperactive mode, right? And it's shaking up the healthcare market. It began probably in earnest about in December 2017, and we're seeing game-changing announcement back into 2017 when CVS, right, said that they would purchase Aetna, right, to create the largest vertically integrated healthcare company in the world, right? The stakes were then raised again, right, when after February, when Amazon, Berkshire, and JP Morgan announced their plans to further disrupt the healthcare market. And then even more recently, right, you have Cigna proposing a multi-billion-dollar purchase of pharmacy benefits manager Express Scripts Incorporated. And then everything you see here on the slide we're showing. So you see this hyperactive vertical integration activity going on, right? So what do we think that that's going to do to the healthcare industry? We think it's going to eventually improve patient experience, We think that the mention that Sam talked about optimizing data, right, and making data available in various forms across these partners, no small challenge. We're going to see advancements on the digital trajectory again, right, in order to compete in this market and this increasing competitive space. We're going to see current and future disruption, right? And then, unlike the horizontal competitive play, we think we'll see fewer raised regulatory eyebrows as this vertical integration happens. Not to say that always will be the case, but we don't necessarily see that impacting the next few years. Mm-hmm. Ultimately, right, disruptive digital transformation is the new normal.
Mm-hmm. And Jamie, a couple of the transactions that you've mentioned there, I thought were particularly pertinent because, when we talk about the Amazon Berkshire JP partnership, where there was obviously a lot of press, it's made a lot of traditional healthcare and pharma companies quite nervous. It's interesting that none of those companies have any real legacy or tradition of operating in the healthcare space. And they're really entering it to really rewrite the norms and recreate the rules of what is going to be possible and acceptable in the future. And for me, when they don't have the healthcare background, but if you ask me about a company like Amazon, what Amazon know how to do is they know how to deliver a lean supply chain. And we know that pharmaceutical supply chain can certainly be optimized. And Amazon, they know about their clients. So when they apply some of their learnings and some of their methodologies to the patients, I can very much understand why some of the traditional players, whether they be payers, providers, or even the pharmaceutical companies themselves, are going to be very nervous about that. So that for me is a major industry disruption. And then when I look at one of the other ones that you haven't mentioned there, but when we look at Roche, one of the giant global pharma companies, buying out Flatiron, announced a couple of weeks ago. I mean, this is a huge enterprise that is recognizing the value of data and recognizing that its business model has to be pivoted much more towards the collation and the processing of vast quantities of data that exist in different parts of the ecosystem to enable them to do their drug discovery and drug development much more effectively.
Absolutely, Sam. And all of this, I think, nets out to, and we'll talk about it on this next slide here, is about we see those organizations that are able to embrace, IT interoperability as being the winners in this convergence of all these activities going on. So HIMSS, in 2013 defined IT interoperability as the ability of different information technology systems and software applications to communicate, exchange data, and use this information that has been exchanged. And Sam talked about data and analyzing it and sharing it and that sort of thing. Well, as we talk to a lot of executives in the payer provider space and the pharmacy benefits management space and other healthcare spaces, we are finding that there's universal agreement, right? That these folks, that if they don't embrace interoperability, right, they're not going to be successful. So from the previous slide, right, we're looking at and talking about bringing very complex businesses together, right? And what does that require? That requires more services to enable and support integration, transformation, right? We don't, in the sourcing space, we don't expect a widespread return to the massive outsourcing projects of yore, right? But what we do see is enterprises using a growing array of business IT services, right? Including enhancing the data center, integrating systems and processes, improving security, and optimizing IT. For example, Sam mentioned the Agile and the DevOps, or that might have been Patrick. And ultimately the business operations, right? What technologies do we see enabling that? And the organizations like Luxoft that we see enabling enterprises to get this done and be an accelerator to get this done, right? We see automation playing a key role in IT and business optimization, machine learning, the associated artificial intelligence technologies, right, will be key to enabling all of this. And then, as we talked about already, right, that whole Amazon consortium will continue to be a major disruptor in the advancement of interoperability. And Sam probably will talk about it more, but Amazon is when it comes to the supply chain and interoperability, they're masters at that. So it'll be interesting to see this continued application of this need to drive interoperability capability. So, yes, sir.
Yeah, and Jamie, maybe if I can add on that, I think that the two overriding themes for me are, in order to compete in this new ecosystem, from whichever angle you're approaching it, you need to be agile and you need to be embracing these new technologies. And just from looking at your slide there, these technologies are complex. These are not commodity solutions where there are vast numbers of people in the world who understand these different technologies in their own right, let alone can build capabilities and solutions that incorporate components of different ones. And that's what we're seeing as we engage with our clients in the healthcare and life science sectors. We're seeing that the progressive organizations and the progressive leaders in those organizations are looking at probably three major categories. One is, how are they able to leverage these technologies for productivity gains, and that could be streamlining and automating the supply chain to be competitive with the likes of Amazon, who are going to be there very shortly. It could be automating help desks with chatbots. And taking cost out of very manual and labor-intensive activities, or it could be we've invested a lot of time in the scientific lab, and pharma companies, you would expect to invest heavily in those spaces, but actually they're a lot more manual and they're a lot more paper-driven than you might imagine. And the opportunity for us to integrate computer vision, where computers are assessing and analyzing experiments and whole lab environments to optimize, to predict, to enable scientists to focus on the higher value add activities that exist in those laboratories, is a big productivity gain and a real shift of focus of the scientists and the researchers to much higher value activity. We're seeing companies in a second category looking to improve that patient engagement and patient experience. And that could be through home monitoring devices, where we are taking artificial intelligence algorithms and enabling behavioral patterns to be monitored in a very privacy respectful way, such that alerts can be fired off to family members, healthcare providers, or healthcare professionals to intervene before serious issues or even hospitalization occurs. And then we're also seeing that how these types of technologies, they're really enabling new business models to materialize. When we talk about precision medicine, so that is moving away from Me Too drugs, which pharmaceutical companies develop for generic classes of patients. The industry is moving to much more precision, patient-specific treatments and medications, where discrete information about a particular patient is required to be able to design and in some cases even develop the treatment for that individual patient. And we have examples where clients of ours are exploring how tighter integration with the patient and direct transfer of data with them is a prerequisite to be able to exist in this type of future precision medicine world.
Absolutely, Sam. The need the way we put it is the need for digital transformation for these organizations, on top of all this integration and this interoperability, the use of the interoperability, right, in order to fully unlock the shareholder value from a lot of these vertical integrations is very important. You know, when you look at the slide and you talk about digital transformation, if I could, so what we're talking about, right, and you see here the interactions, user interactions, the experience capabilities, right, the improved IT and business processes and governance, new insights through data optimization. It's just absolutely pressing that this happen. And you know, an organization like Luxoft, and we'll talk about this more in some slides ahead, you know, can help an organization accelerate and not have to relearn integrating some of these things and generating some of this value that I'm talking about, right? And Sam talked about it, right? There's you have all sorts of technology that's come into play. The automation, the artificial intelligence, you know, blockchain, we'll talk about that, voice interactive technology, right? Nanotechnology, discoveries in genetics, medicines. It's just absolutely amazing the aggregate forces going on here in the healthcare space.
Perhaps we can go to the next slide. And maybe I can start the conversation off here. I mean, I alluded it in some degree to some of the challenges that we are solving for the clients that we work with. And we've got Todd on the call here, so I want to get him, give him the opportunity to comment a little bit on blockchain. But you know, blockchain is very much in its infancy in all industries, but particularly within healthcare. But when I refer back to this ecosystem, this payer, provider, pharma, biotech ecosystems that are evolving, blockchain is actually becoming a go-to technology to enable trustful communication and trustful verification of data between the different organizations that now need to coexist much more closely. So Todd, can you give us a couple of examples there?
Yeah, I mean, you know, the some of the things that are going on with blockchain and in identity and trust really open up opportunities for new business models. We saw in some of our healthcare POCs how, you know, we realized that sharing data across blockchains gave us opportunities to put together insurance plans that crossed organizations that weren't under the same umbrella, so the sort of thing that weren't possible before. And I think a lot of the things that we're going to realize with blockchain and the trust that it brings is things that we've never done before. You know, there's going to be new opportunities that are driven by even the cryptocurrency aspect of it, being able to transact in new ways and more transacting directly with the patient to the provider, rather than going through these third-party administrators that are today in the middle of most transactions.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely, and artificial. I think it's worth. There's a lot of hype and there's a lot of discussion around artificial intelligence. You know, and artificial intelligence is dependent on huge data sets. So if you want to be able to train algorithms and develop protocols that are actually going to advance decision making, you need huge quantities of data. So the ability of, you know, pharma companies, for example, to get their hands on real world evidence. You know, traditionally they've operated very much from the perspective of clinical trials with carefully curated data sets through a relatively small number of specific patients. Now we're seeing that actually real world evidence, you know, data collected from the commercial marketplace, from payers, from providers, is of much more value in the aggregate than it ever was in the past. And pharma companies and payers are really looking and interrogating this data, and it's enabling companies to take decisions about whether they actually make investments in the drugs that they're developing. And it's certainly informing insurance companies and healthcare payers about the medications and about the treatments that they are going to reimburse for, because they have much more data to be able to look at to evaluate whether the compounds and whether the treatments are effective as the manufacturers say they are. So certainly, blockchain, in terms of interoperability and enabling safe collaboration across the ecosystem, big data analysis, artificial intelligence for collecting different data sources from across the ecosystem, and then enabling various players to aggregate and take effective business decisions based on the holistic rather than the very narrow. And then just to go back to one of the examples that I was making in the lab, there are huge opportunities for all companies to be more effective in the way that they operate, and solutions that we work with, automating processes, automating infrastructure provision, automating application deployment. As internal IT organizations start focusing much more on external patient value, there's a huge shift that needs to take place there in terms of their agility and their ability to change in a much more agile and real-time way. And these solutions that need to be created are highly complex and cross many organizational and process boundaries.
So on the next slide, what's happening in the IT industry, and Sam, if you don't mind, I'll keep going here in terms of my comments and the comment that you just made. Right, what's happening to these poor IT enterprise teams? Right, you have this confluence of all this activity going on. They've already been lean and mean, right, and they're looking to become more efficient and that sort of stuff. And now they have all this integration to do. They have all this interoperability to do. And how do they get it done? I can clearly tell you that there are a significant number of organizations embracing automation in order to shift those resources to be able to focus on some of these other tasks that we're talking about. So that is an incredible amount of activity going on right now. But that's just one out of all of the activities that have to happen, right? So you have this confluence of forces going on. You've got lean and mean teams trying to keep up. You've got all this innovation happening, right, and all this integration happening. And simply said, without having the partners to help you accelerate through that and handle just the volume of what needs to happen, right? Not having a good plan there, right? Again, back to the getting good shareholder value out of these vertical integrations. I'll turn it over to you, Sam and Todd.
Yeah, there's a lot of innovation going on in the healthcare industry, with AI, machine learning, computer vision, and blockchain. But these are all new tech, and they're all in their infancy. And we're working proof of concepts with clients in all these domains today. But some of the bigger challenges are taking these solutions to enterprise scale. And that's going to be something that we've never really done across this digital transformation. Oftentimes you're taking one or two technologies to new technologies and adopting them into your organization. Today, we're looking at so many different, really game-changing technologies all coming together at once. And that's why the technologies need a broader digital transformation adopting plan, and they're going to need streamlined processing and adoption of, as we've said before, DevOps practices are really going to be key. And the IT departments are going to be stretched thin, or we're seeing that today. And in order to adopt and manage all of these new technologies, we're going to be seeing significant new technical capabilities being needed in the IT space. partly because a lot of these new services are patient facing, and that's a new landscape for the IT department. Typically they've sort of been on the back end and not necessarily working directly with the patients, and so much of this stuff is reaching directly out to the end customers.
Yeah. And Todd, I mean, I think if I can just pick up on one point there, I think in the same way as that the complexity of the solutions that we're creating is increasing, the complexity of the back end technology is also increasing, and it is a bit of a perfect storm for IT departments at the moment. And the more progressive CIOs out there have really streamlined, and they've got their commodity systems and their commodity infrastructure in order, and they've got free resources to invest in the new innovation and the digital transformation. But they need to invest in their own resources. They need to have people within their own organizations who really understand the complexity and can join the dots across these different technologies. And they need to invest in the right partners. And I would argue that Luxoft, we are that right partner to be able to work with them in that agile way. We understand the different building blocks that create these solutions. We have a strength and depth in software engineering and technical capabilities across the different technology stacks, and can work with the technology of choice that most closely aligns with the client that we're working with. And thirdly, that we understand the legacy, because as you both said, proof of concepts are great, but game-changing technology and competing with Amazon is not going to happen through proof of concepts. It's the speed at which these new solutions can be scaled across the enterprise that is really going to make the difference. And there, the agility, the depth of engineering knowledge, and the ability to operate complex solutions across new and legacy environments is really going to be a differentiator in the sector in which we operate. And that's where we've been making a lot of investments over the last few years to ensure that we do have the leading blockchain talent, the leading AI talent, the leading machine learning talent and computer vision talent, but also the domain expertise. We know what our clients, what were the challenges that are facing our clients, and how we can quickly demonstrate our understanding and the value that we can bring to them through true digital transformation at scale.
I couldn't agree more. The most organizations really don't have the resources today and to address some of the rapid changes that we're seeing, and that's where Luxoft really can come in and help them with adopting some of these significant changes. And
so, Pat, how are we looking? What's the maybe we can move to the next slide. We've got the Q&A.
Perfect timing. Well, thank all the attendees for some of the questions we got here. Jamie, I think this one might be a good start for you. Can you talk a little bit about the positioning change that some of the providers are making in terms of digital solutions for this vertical? And, based on that, how important is the ability to do agile and DevOps delivery in those situations?
Yeah, absolutely. And Sam talked a lot about this, right? About accelerating and continuously improving what you have there in market, right? With a DevOps capability. Providers are providing the ability to stand up those centers of excellence, reorganize your staff to, be able to focus on new things while they do the things that they're good at, right? And in this case, it might be doing agile and DevOps for you, or augment your teams and that sort of thing. So whether it's helping you migrate to from a plan, build, run to an agile DevOps, or improving your governance, or accelerating your adoption of cloud technologies, or as Sam was talking about, bringing the machine learning expertise and talent to the table. If I was a CIO, I absolutely would have folks that have those capabilities at my side, picking up the pieces and parts in order to help me accelerate to this, this new competitive playing field. Never mind, right? Just the simple vertical integration activities that have to go on.
Mm-hmm.
And in terms of, let's drill down on blockchain. So I think every provider is trying to position themselves as a blockchain expert. But clearly that has serious requirements for clients, particularly on understanding business outcome, all the way through to certain delivery models needed to implement blockchain. Mm-hmm. Can you guys talk about, is blockchain a true solution for this industry? There seems to be a lot of media hype around it, and I think people are always looking for clarity on, will this impact my business? So how do we make this sort of a short and sweet answer?
So today, blockchain's sort of sucking the wind out of the room because everybody's on board, really excited about it. And it is a powerful technology, but it's just a piece in the puzzle. And implementing solutions on blockchain can be very complicated. And, people are going in with some naive ideas that we're going to do everything on the blockchain. And it really doesn't work that way. The blockchain is great for tracking transactions and creating new degrees of trust, but it's not at the point where we're going to run, jettison all of our legacy technologies and just run everything on the blockchain. It's an integration of the blockchain into new systems.
Yeah. And I mean, just to build on that, Todd, I mean, I'm not into the level of technical understanding that you obviously have, but for me, it's been a real awakening having deep conversations with different companies from across the sector, particularly over the last 6 months. And I would encourage anybody that's looking at blockchain to really have a conversation with a service provider who can actually differentiate between different types of distributed ledger technology, because there are many different flavors, and blockchain is not the solution for every problem. And there are many people out there who are trying to position it as such. So it's very important that people understand where distributed ledger technologies can actually have an advantage. And the second theme that's really come out to me and out for me in some of these conversations is that the blockchain technologies, it's not so much the technical understanding of a blockchain, but it's how you relate it to the business problem that you're trying to solve.
Exactly.
That is the key. And if you don't have that deep understanding of the business model that you're trying to enable, or the trust issue that you're trying to solve, or can really explain, well, why should this data sit on the blockchain, or why should the data not sit on the blockchain? There's a very deep level of sophistication in these conversations, and a lot of it is getting swept up in the blockchain hype.
That's exactly right. I mean, you also made the point about the difference in the different blockchain technologies, and that's one of the things that Luxoft takes a technology agnostic approach, which is somewhat unique in the industry. We have a litmus test that we work with customers. We develop a use case, and then we develop some functional requirements, and based on those functional requirements, then we step back and we say, which of the many technologies, whether it's Hyperledger or Corda or Ethereum, which one is most appropriate for solving the problem? Because choosing the wrong technology can be really damaging. And the other thing is that there's no one size fits all. A lot of the solutions I've been working on, are made up of multiple technologies. We've got, one stack that we're using for identity and another stack that we're using for governance and supply chain. So, understanding where this stuff is going is really important.
Mm-hmm. And final point on blockchain maybe is that the way in which blockchains only work, well, they're only relevant when you start crossing company and organizational boundaries, and where we're really seeing the stumbling block, or where there's a little bit of a reluctance, is that everybody understands that we need to share data, and there need to be different nodes across the ledger, but people are reluctant to be the first mover. So, how am I going to convince you or anybody else, or my competitors or my collaborators, to share information or to share transactions on the ledger that I am setting up? And for me, I passionately believe that the next 5 or 10 years, distributed ledger technologies are going to be a game changer. But it's going to take 1 or 2 very progressive pharma companies or payers to really push the needle before everybody jumps on the bandwagon. Yes,
I agree. It's really hard to get C-level executives to see the value in sharing data with their competitors. And there is one question I saw that they were asking. Someone asked about whether Luxoft is doing any blockchain hackathons. We do have one planned this spring. I'm attending one next week in the Netherlands, and so we'll get back to you with more information on those as they evolve.
Great.
So let's switch gears a little bit here. Interesting question around U.S. legislation limitations, i.e. MACRA, and what are we seeing about adjustments needed from either the industry or the provider world because of certain U.S. legislation changes? And do we have anything in terms of what we're looking at on offering adaptability because of legislation? Any comments, Jamie, Sam?
Yeah, I'd make a quick comment. So although I said that, you probably wouldn't see too much of an eye on regulatory activity wrapped around the vertical integration activity that's going on, we do expect the U.S. legislation to increase a little bit more and move more of a European level of, data privacy and that sort of stuff. So, do we have a plan for that? Well, there's another hurdle, right, that the incumbents and the competition obviously need to take into account and execute upon as it evolves and changes. So I don't know that anyone really has a plan. Understand, right, that some of the innovation and some of the new entrants into this market are challenged with it. Just another hurdle to get over. But we do, you see the pressure for the innovation here. So it's going to be some interesting times here over the next 4 or 5 years.
And I would agree with that. And I would say that for me, it's almost impossible to predict the future in this respect. I think regulations are going to evolve. Patient privacy and patient level data, of course, should be regulated, and it should be controlled very, very tightly. But the same degree, technology is not the pace of technology change is not going to slow down, and there are always going to be companies out there that are prepared to push the needle in terms of moving the industry, moving the productivity, moving the patient engagement, moving business models forwards. And I think that we have to be respectful of the industry that we're in, but we also have to be flexible, and we also have to have agility. And I go back to agility as a key word every time. We need to be working with business leaders who are agile in mindset, that they can see that the climate, and they can see that the regulations, and they can see that these industries are changing, and they have a certain agility of behavior in terms of the way they operate their businesses, the way that they operate organizations, to be able to maximize the windows of opportunity when they open up. And I think that's going to be a responsibility for the leaders in Luxoft. I think it's going to be the responsibility for the leaders in the clients that we work with. But those open leaders, combined with imaginative, agile providers, and I would obviously position us in that category, we'll find opportunities for true innovation and excellence in our respective spaces.
Thank you, Sam, Jamie, Todd. It seems like we are at almost the hour here. I'll send a ping out here for any last questions through the Q&A box. But it seems like, gentlemen, we've covered a very interesting area, one that's sort of trapped in the immediate demand for business outcome. But I think we've also covered the large-scale blockchain implementation and yet implications in this industry. Any final words, Sam and Jamie, to close out the great discussion we've had thus far?
I would just say thanks to Jamie, thanks to you, Pat, and thanks to Todd for joining me in this conversation. It was really great, and to the people listening, I hope it's been informative. I hope you've heard something useful. I'm very happy to continue the conversation if there are things that you'd like to learn more about. My contact details will be made available, and I look forward to continuing the dialogue offline.
I do as well. It's exciting times.
I would add as well, I wish you all luck. If there's ever anything and advice that we can give you, we see lots of different organizations trying to figure this out, lots of lessons learned. Happy to talk at any time. Thank you.
Just as a reminder, everyone, we will have the webinar posted on our website, both the slides and the recorded version for your sharing across your social networks. Of course, take a look at our LinkedIn, as we've been really amplifying that for a lot of our thought leadership programs. And we're excited to continue the dialogue with you one-on-one to discuss more about what we see in this ever so fast changing industry. This is Patrick from Luxoft, signing off.